UFO sightings happen almost every day, but not all sightings are equal. In the court of public opinion, the most credible witnesses come from the military and law enforcement, men and women trained to observe and investigate.
Powers of observation in police officers are orders of magnitude what you'll find in most witnesses, and this is why, when it comes to UFOs, that police witnesses are so important.
If hard evidence of the existence of extraterrestrials is out there, the military and the police will likely find it first. And perhaps they already have. Join us as we investigate the most important police sightings of UFOs. A global effort has begun. Secret files hidden from the public for decades, detailing every UFO account, are now available to the public. We are about to uncover the truth behind these classified documents. Find out what the government doesn't want you to know. Alien Files, Unsealed. Exposing the biggest secrets on planet Earth. Communities around the world rely on policemen and women to ensure safety and security. And if an extraterrestrial threat were to suddenly occur, they would almost certainly be the first to respond.
Police officers are very important witnesses. They're highly trained to be visual, observe, and essentially document their daily routine.
But what happens when they witness a close encounter of the third kind? Unsealed case file, the Zamora Incident. April 24th, 1964, Socorro, New Mexico. New Mexico State Police Officer Lonnie Zamora is in hot pursuit of a speeding car when something catches his attention.
He saw a strange light in the sky and heard a roaring sound, rather like a rocket.
Zamora breaks off his pursuit of the speeding car and is concerned that the roaring sound is a local dynamite shack exploding. But then he sees an object above him.
He broke off his pursuit and decided to follow this strange object. He lost sight of it for a while, and then when he came over a hill, he encountered this most extraordinary scene of what looked like a spherical or oval-shaped silver object actually on the ground.
He stops his patrol car, gets out of his car, and actually starts to approach the object. He sees it and describes it as this white in color, spherical or saucer-shaped craft. It had definitely landed on the ground. And then he sees bodies actually exit the craft, walk out into the field. As he approaches whomever these beings were, he describes it as like he startled them or kind of scared them a little bit, and that they got back into the craft and took off.
The craft accelerates out of sight at an incredible speed.
As the craft was taking off, he remembered that there was some type of flame or maybe an engine of some kind that was underneath the craft as it took off. And as he approached where the object was, he saw that there was actually trace evidence or evidence that was left behind that something was there.
Zamora's training takes over. He gets on the radio and calls in.
This really was almost a perfect storm of what makes a UFO case compelling. A police witness, a landed UFO, and physical traces.
His testimony about the flame underneath the craft was backed up by the evidence that was left in the field. So we had scorched ground, scorched vegetation, that something was definitely there, and something altered the vegetation in the field.
The Zamora sighting quickly becomes one of the most heavily investigated UFO sightings of its day. The Army, Air Force's Project Blue Book, NICAP, and the FBI all try to understand its implications.
There was an area of the desert which seemed to be kind of more glassy, as if there really had been something with a high heat source present there. And when the US government looked at this, they said, we really don't know what to make of this.
noted Project Blue Book astronomer Alan Hynek arrives on the scene. Hynek has years of experience investigating not only aerial phenomena, but the people who witnessed them.
Hynek called Officer Zamora an unimpeachable witness, and I think that there's a couple of reasons for that. He was a very honest and trustworthy police officer, but on top of that, you also had physical trace evidence that you can touch, feel, and back up his testimony.
Critics find it hard to dismiss Zamora's testimony.
When he didn't know something, he said, "I don't know." When he didn't see something, he said, "I didn't see it." This was a man who did not guess. And Hynek said, witnesses don't get any better than this.
There are also other eyewitnesses who describe seeing and hearing the same object in the same area at the same time.
People higher up the chain of command would look at a case like this and still dismiss UFOs as just misidentifications and hoaxes. Famously, Hynek went on to say, the Air Force doesn't know what science is.
But the Air Force's formal public report rejects some elements of the testimony and attempts to discredit the other eyewitnesses, even Zamora himself.
There were some theories that were put around about Zamora. They were pretty insulting, actually. Maybe he had been the victim of a practical joke. Maybe he'd been in on some hoax to try to bring tourism to the area. None of these theories stood up. He had nothing to gain by this, and probably everything to lose.
But a secret report prepared for the CIA states there is no question about Zamora's reliability.
In later years, Zamora became so disillusioned with both the Air Force and indeed with the UFO community that he really dropped out of the whole scene. He just wanted an explanation, and he never got one.
Coming up, British police witness a wave of UFOs over the UK, and their testimony makes the government jump into action. Alien Files, Unsealed. Most UFO sightings are plagued by contradictions and inconsistencies. But police UFO sightings are comprehensive, critical, and scientific. In a word, they are credible. But what happens when over 24 police officers witness something unexplainable in the sky? Unsealed case file. The Cosford Incident. March 30th and 31st, 1993. Devon, England.
The Cosford Incident from the UK in March 1993 is one of the best evidenced waves of UFO sightings in recent years. There were several dozen UFO sightings, many of which were from serving police officers and military personnel.
The high point of the Cosford wave saw 2 Air Force bases directly overflown by an unknown craft. And the UK Ministry of Defence's very own UFO investigator, Nick Pope, was on the case.
The UFO was seen by a patrol of military police officers, and they said that this thing passed directly overhead and was triangular in shape and of immense size. But at the second base, Shawbury, the meteorological officer reported to me the following morning that he had seen a huge triangular-shaped craft flying maybe no more than 200 feet above the ground.
But what the officer sees next shakes him to the core.
He saw a thin beam of light fire down from this UFO to the ground and then track backwards and forwards as if it was looking for something. And then, he said, from a very slow speed, maybe no more than 50 miles an hour, the beam of light retracted and the UFO from this slow speed accelerated away to the horizon just in an instant. His voice, by the way, was still shaking as I interviewed him the following morning.
Nick Pope digs deeper into the case, and his reports reach the leaders of the Ministry of Defense.
We were all completely baffled. There was nothing tracked on radar. There were 1 or 2 possibly vague pings, but nothing nothing that we could say with any certainty were any kind of aircraft that we were familiar with.
Police officers were instrumental in convincing authorities that something violated UK airspace.
Police officers played a huge part in bringing the Cosford incident to light. It was a report from a patrol of Air Force police officers at RAF Cosford that really was one of the key incidents of that whole night. Police officers in the surrounding area were able to say that civilians had seen this thing too. So it was the police that drew together the strands of this.
One of the key factors in gathering evidence was the UK's implementation of a standardized police form.
Every single police station in the United Kingdom had a standard operating procedure and indeed a form whereby we in the Ministry of Defence had given them the questions that we wanted answered. So this came to us in a strictly regimented format so that we had all the raw data that we needed in terms of date, time, location, height, speed, description, sound, etc.
The quality of the police testimony played a critical role.
I interviewed many of the police, civilian and military. Their testimony was second to none. These people were trained observers, and when they relayed this to me, I was able to say with a high degree of confidence, this is exactly the way that this happened.
After such an in-depth investigation, the UK government comes to a stunning conclusion.
For the first time that I can recall, we put in black and white in our assessment that an uncorrelated target, an unidentified craft, penetrated the UK's sophisticated air defence network and flew with apparent impunity for hours over the United Kingdom. So it's arguably the only government assessment of UFOs that directly contradicts the party line, the official line.
Coming up, multiple police departments across Illinois monitor the route of a triangular UFO. But some experts believe the police tracking reveals a top-secret project. Alien files unsealed. Civilian extraterrestrial sightings are often greeted with skepticism. However, eyewitness reports filed by police personnel can elevate UFO case files.
If they see something strange and unusual, chances are you're going to get a very detailed response from them.
But in some cases, highly coordinated efforts by multiple police officers can yield more questions than answers. Unsealed case file, the St. Clair Triangle, January 5th, 2000, Southern Illinois. Officer Ed Barton responds to a 4 a.m. call from dispatch. Witnesses claim they have seen a UFO in the night sky. When Officer Barton arrives at the location, he witnesses a black triangle beaming powerful lights to the ground. He claims the triangle emits no noise and does not behave like conventional aircraft. Suddenly, the triangle accelerates out of sight, and it is picked up by another police officer in the next town.
Here you've got many of these police witnesses describing a vast triangular-shaped craft just hanging there in the sky and then suddenly accelerating away to the horizon at high Mach speeds. What really made this compelling was that not only were some of the witnesses police officers out on patrol, but these police officers were radioing back to their dispatchers what they were seeing, and they were also coordinating the investigation when it came to sightings from the public.
And they were able to actually document where this craft was heading and then have other police officers essentially pick up the chase and follow this craft wherever it was going.
5 police departments, spanning a large area of southwest Illinois, tracked the triangular UFO.
And it was that type of communication which ultimately became a very powerful tool for them to essentially track this UFO to try and figure out what it was. When you have multiple police officers that are able to essentially track a UFO, and they can stay in contact with each other through radio contact. That brings another level of credibility to this.
I can't say with any certainty that this was extraterrestrial. We have no definitive proof, but sometimes with a sighting like this, you're really left with the feeling there's not much else it can be.
But some experts believe the Illinois Triangle can be explained.
But I think at the end of the day, it's probably a military aircraft. Because when you look at our technology, when you look at the F-117 stealth fighter, and you look at what we have flying in the skies, or what ultimately could be a top-secret aircraft, it is very similar in design. So I think the Black Triangle UFO phenomena, what we're seeing is maybe a peek into technology that's being developed, but the military hasn't told us yet.
Whatever it was, some experts believe that even the most credible testimony will always be met with a certain degree of skepticism.
I think there's another factor at play here, and this is human variation. Different witnesses have different memories, they have different belief systems, different perceptions. I think almost everyone is going to see and perceive something, particularly something exotic, outside their normal frame of reference, in a different way. The irony is that this is something every police officer will tell you.
Police accounts of UFO sightings can elevate the study of unknown objects in our skies.
I think a police officer, when they see something like that, that level of credibility is really raised for a particular case, because you do have that level of honesty and reliability and essentially training that if they saw something that they cannot explain, I think that's something that we have to look at.
However, even the most highly trained police personnel are not immune to skeptics, something the officers involved in the St. Clair Triangle incident know all too well.
In the aftermath of the Illinois UFO sightings, many of the police witnesses, many of the police officers who investigated this and saw things themselves, they had headaches, they had anxiety, depression, they became the butt end of jokes.
If you start getting made fun of, or somebody completely discounts what you saw, the next time you see something like that, my guess is you're going to be pretty apprehensive to coming out and explaining what you saw.
So I think you're looking at the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole bunch of other police sightings out there that never see the light of day at all, because the people think, well, what's in it for me? Only a whole bunch of heartache.
Along with ridicule comes a culture of suppression.
And I think we see this time and time again. We see this with military, commercial aviation pilots. We see them come out with a story, and what happens? They get made fun of. There's always a joke at the end of a news broadcast.
Higher up the chain of command, you clearly have, as you have, for example, also with pilots, people saying, we really don't want you talking to the media about this.
But at the end of the day, the most credible witnesses just may be the people we trust to keep us safe.
I think that UFO investigators recognize that if you have two cases, one of which has a police officer backing up and one doesn't, chances are the case with the police officer is going to rank just a little bit higher than all the others.
Alien Files, Unsealed.